My name's Toby, and I am the official moderator of this session, or host. I don't know what you call this type of role. And I'm going to be introducing you to Shane in a moment. The topic of the webinar is developing a business analysis framework. And there's a bit on alignment there, isn't there? So I'm about to introduce you to our esteemed colleague, Mr. Shane Hastie, and I can give you a very brief background on him. To some, he needs no introduction. You may have seen him keynoting at a conference or many conferences all around the world, or even been a participant in one of his lively classes, or even read one of his best-selling books. I'm not jealous, but this is one that I've been poring over recently, the Rock Crusher. So he's obviously been in the agile ecosphere for many years, 35 years, he says. It's a long time, Shane. He's done various things. So he's got lots of experience as, in many roles: a coder, a tester, a trainer, a project manager, and obviously a business analyst. That is pretty important that he's got experience in that. And, currently he's the global, we've got to add something very regarded, revered. He's the global delivery lead at SoftEd Skills. And now I'm not going to go through all his accolades. It could take many days, but I will talk about the relevant achievements. And one being that he was a member of the core team who wrote version 3 of the BABOK, the business analysis body of knowledge, and he's also led the team for version 2 for the BABOK with regards to the agile extension. So that is a brief. Now look, there's many people have arrived now. That is a brief intro to Shane. We've got about 45 minutes, have we, to play with. And Shane will be doing most of the talking, most of the presentation. But we will have time for some Q&A. So just be aware that we've got this Q&A function, literally called Q&A, and if you want to pop some questions, I will be looking out for those. You won't really hear from me very much more, which is a relief for all of you. I'll sort of close off the session, but I'm going to pass on to Shane. But yes, please think about the Q&A. We could possibly ask questions during, but maybe we leave it to the end. We'll figure it out. But over to you, Shane.
Cool. Thank you, Toby. Kia ora, folks. Good day. I'm Shane, as Toby says, and we're going to be talking about developing a business analysis framework. So Toby's done a wonderful job of summarizing just who I am, but there's a graphic representation. And yes, I have written a couple of books. And for those of you who are having to study the BABOK for the certification exams, yes, I apologize. It is 527 pages. One of the goals for the core team when we started working on BABOK version 3 was to try and make it smaller. I'm afraid we failed miserably. It went from 270 to 527 pages. But that's because there's such valuable content in there. So what are we going to talk about today? We've got 30, 40 minutes together. What is a framework? The role of business analysis, the techniques, the things that make up this framework, building your framework, some tips and tricks, particularly some things to avoid and common mistakes that we have seen, and Q&A. And again, the Q&A could be just pop the questions into the Q&A box, and we'll see. We might answer them as we go, or we'll hold them for the end. So, yeah. So why do you need one? What is this thing? It's a way of putting together a toolkit, a common language, a set of guiding principles. And I want to say guiding principles, not strict adherence to a process. And it allows the analysis work in our organizations to be done in a way that that they are generative, additive, and support the career development of business analysts and business analysis, definitely, but also the different initiatives, different pieces of work that the organization has under play to support what techniques, what tools should and could be used. So what is in a business analysis framework? And this is one that we teach in a number of these software business analysis classes. And we look at it down the right are some key factors, constraints, dependencies, issues, assumptions, risks, all related to the product, the initiative, the project that is being worked on. It starts with some mechanism, understand the problem opportunity, what are the business needs. Now, down the right, you see a long list of different techniques and tools. We are not saying use every one of these techniques on every initiative. What we are saying is have at your fingertips a set of techniques and tools that your business analysis community can draw upon when working at the different levels of granularity. Are we at the business needs level? Are we down at the stakeholder? Are we at the solution needs? Are we down in the dirt of the data? And having a common set of tools, techniques, and processes and guidelines. What are the governance mechanisms that the organization uses? For instance, that would be part of your business analysis framework. What are how do we communicate? What are the documentation needs for different types of initiatives? When working in different methodologies or approaches, which of these techniques and tools is going to be useful and appropriate? So these are the things that a framework for business analysis will help us with. It's a common set of practices, techniques, tools, processes that we put together, and it must be a living artifact. It is not something that sits once we define it, and that is going to be our Bible of analysis approaches. No, this is a learning adaptive tool. But much more than the tools, the techniques, is the communication. How, as a business analyst, do we show up and when as a business analysis professional, and to use the language from the Agile extension, to be a bridge, not a ferry. It's not about eliciting requirements, producing a large document, taking it down to the edge of the river and putting it on a ferry, putting 2 gold coins on top of it, and sending it across to the other side, hoping that at some point in time somebody will pick it up and open it. No, this is totally about the communication, the collaboration, the bringing the right people together. Sometimes doing that translation, hearing the Romulan, speaking the Klingon, communicating between the different and diverse stakeholder communities. And part of the work of building a framework is to think about who are those communities and what are those communities, and also what is the work. So if we go to the Babok, we talk about what is business analysis? What is this activity? And the definition, enabling change in the context of an organization by defining needs and recommending solutions that deliver value to stakeholders. And those 6 core concepts guide the work that we do. So all of the tools, all of the techniques are about helping us understand the value, the why, what is the context, what is our organization, who are our stakeholders, what are their needs, and then how do we recommend solutions? How do we help them solve real world problems? That's the work of business analysis. How do we change the world? And there are lots of standards and guides. I'm going to point you to the Babok, to the business analysis standard, the agile extension, the guide to data analytics, the guide to product ownership analysis. There's lots that you can draw upon when putting together your framework. And in one levels, there's so much to draw upon, it can be overwhelming. So within those guides, there's pointers towards knowledge areas and tasks. What are the things that we do? And here are the 6 knowledge areas of the Babok: planning and monitoring. So from the perspective of building a framework, we need to consider all of these 6 knowledge areas. How do we plan our business analysis approach? How do we plan our stakeholder engagement? What level of planning, what type of planning is appropriate? Understanding the strategy. How do we know the current state, the defined future state? What are the risks? How do we support the organization and make sure the work we're doing aligns with organization strategy? Elicitation and collaboration. How do we conduct our elicitation work? A lot of our time is spent in workshops, in observation, in document analysis. Well, how do we find out? How do we go and learn? And a very important part of that, elicitation and collaboration. Who do we collaborate with? What is the requirements and design life cycle that we are using? How does it fit in the bigger life cycle? How does it fit in our organization, in our methodologies of producing value for the organization? And then how do we do that requirements analysis, breaking things apart into constituent components for understanding, and then the synthesis side of that, the design definition, having figured out what the problem is, what the opportunity is, how can we solve that problem? So the analysis, the synthesis, the requirements analysis, design definition that go hand in hand. We don't produce value if we do one without the other. And then the solution evaluation. How do we confirm that this thing will solve the right problem, that it has solved the right problem? How do we ensure that we are effectively building the right thing? And it's about the build the right thing as well as build the thing right. How do we, as in our capacity as business analysis professionals, support the organization? So thinking of our framework, here are some of the things that need to be in there, some of the tasks, some of the processes around that. And then we have techniques, and I've just taken a 1 page from the Babok and 1 page from the Agile extension to the Babok, and here we have 70 techniques. This can be overwhelming. And if we add the other practice guides in there, it's, oh, where do I start? Which one should we use? And part of building an analysis framework is, okay, what techniques should we as an organization embrace and use, train people in, and have people comfortable with working? Because as we use the different techniques and it becomes common practice in the organization, people get used to seeing the artifacts for this technique, for instance, and the level of education within the organization goes down. If the first time you see, say, one of these, the lean initiative canvas, and if we think about, and here's a recommendation for a framework, one of the tools you want is something that will help you put the project on a page, the initiative in a single space. And we think that for most organizations, the lean initiative canvas is a really powerful tool. And this is one of the techniques that you could then include in your framework. So we don't need the 17 others or 6 others that are there. Maybe this is the one that we want to apply in and put into our business analysis framework here. Understanding how that helps us solve the right problem and solve the problem right. Where does the intersection of desirable, feasible, viable, if we look at those colors on this canvas, overlaying the colors on the canvas, there are some elements in the canvas that help us understand desirable. There are some that helps us understand feasible. Should we do it? Could we do it? And viable. Should we do it given the costs and benefits related to that? Christine, you put your hand up. Please, would you pop a question into the Q&A box? We see no open questions there. So desirable, feasible, viable, and thinking about those different perspectives. Now, in terms of building a framework, the chat is disabled. I'm afraid I don't have any mechanism to enable it, but please put things into the Q&A. In terms of our framework, what are the techniques and tools that are going to help us understand desirable, feasible, viable? And Toby is answering that question there. Great, thank you. So finding that innovation sweet spot. Also, how do we know who? Who are the stakeholders? What is our context? Well, there are a number of ways of exploring this. We're going to suggest some sort of a context diagram. You could use, as we've sort of here, the stakeholder onion diagram. You could use just an interest influence grid. All of those will achieve the same outcome. But which one is appropriate? And again, making a recommendation, we're suggesting that something like the stakeholder context diagram is a useful tool, and the onion elements here of what is inside our organization, what is outside our organization. James, a good question. Is the canvas like a business requirements document that we fill out? It should, or is it somebody else fills it out? I'm going to say this is going to be part of defining your framework. My advice for most organizations that these tools should be as collaborative as possible. This is not about the business analyst going off in a corner and building stuff, or anyone going off in a corner. It's the work, the collaboration. So one of the knowledge areas, collaboration, elicitation and collaboration to produce the artifacts. Also understanding what is the customer experience. And again, there are many different tools and techniques. We have a suggestion around using something like the customer journey map. And in the Babok, there are a number of different techniques that talk to the customer experience, the customer journey. Well, yeah, which ones are going to be appropriate? Again, from a building a framework perspective, you need something like this. Which one? I'm not going to say, but we've got some recommendations that we've used. If you're working in the agile space, and please tell me that anyone building software today is working in the agile space, then Jeff Patton's work on story mapping, the wonderfully powerful technique. So how do we define our user stories? What's the appropriate level of granularity? When do we define how do we use the invest criteria and so forth? So it's not just good enough to say, well, yeah, we use user stories. What is good for user stories? How do we make sure that we don't have we can't see the wood from the trees problem that is so prevalent in the use of user stories today? And I will do a shameless place commercial here. That book that Toby so kindly held up earlier, the Rock Crusher, is definitely we feel that the authors, myself and my two co-authors, feel that this is a contribution to helping manage that flow of work. And there's the concept, the continuous prioritization. How do you manage that multiple different time frames? In the Agile extension, we talk about the multiple rolling wave planning for deliveries. Well, what are your time horizons? In the Rock Crusher, we talk about ready, forecasted, speculative, wishful thinking. Again, where are your time horizons? How do you grind work down? How do you make sure that stuff is being pushed out through the wastegate? One of the most common mistakes and a common anti-pattern is organizations with, in some cases, thousands of service requests, whether they user stories, whether they're Jira tickets, that have been hanging around. In one example, one organization I worked with, we looked at the backlog for a single team, and they looked after a number of products within the organization, and there were over 7,000 items in the backlog, and there were nearly 1,000 of them that were over 7 years old. These were things that are never going to be looked at, never going to be worked on. But nobody had the courage and the authority to dispose of them. Well, our process, our framework needs to have a mechanism to throw away the waste. What is that? What are those wastegate processes, that wastegate rules going to be when we start to think about how we define that framework? And then models. There's the George Box quote: "All models are wrong, but some are useful." In your context, which models could be useful? And if we add these models to our framework, then we're making some commitments. One is we're going to teach people how to use the models. We're also going to teach our stakeholders over time how to read and understand the models. Which of those modeling techniques could we incorporate into our framework? And here are 6 that are fairly commonly used. Do we need use cases and user stories? Probably not. Maybe. Would a process model be valuable in your context? Yeah, maybe. If it will, then great. If not, don't use it. But as part of setting up your business analysis framework, which models do we want to make available for common use in the organization? And then making sure that we have the skills to both produce them and an understanding to interpret them and understand them. So models help us answer questions, and our frameworks must answer these types of questions. The why. So things like the lean canvas and the context diagram help us understand the why for a piece of work. What are the actors' goals? Who are the people that are going to use this, and what do they need to achieve? So users' journeys, use cases, user stories, uh, could be techniques. What are the rules? How do we identify the business rules? And it could be state transitions, it could be decision modeling language if we're going to automate, it could be simple decision tables, decision trees. What is going to be appropriate in our context? The who, the what, the how, the process model, swim lane diagrams, flow charts, activity diagrams. Are we using the BPMN syntax? Again, which ones are going to be useful and appropriate here? What is this thing going to look like? So data flow diagrams, wireframes, or do we just go with simple UI mockups using bits of paper or tools like Figma or Miro? Do we build prototypes? Do we do the more structured interface models, particularly around machine to machine? And then thinking about what has to be processed? What is the information? Data models, entity relationship diagrams, conceptual and logical, or is it just good enough to produce a data dictionary and we'll do that technical stuff during the implementation? We don't have single answers, but these are the types of things you need to think about when you're considering what is our business analysis framework. So your framework, how do we investigate? What's our approach to investigation? What starts this? How do we make sure we bring different perspectives together to understand? How do we identify the different stakeholders, both within and outside our organization? What approach do we take to analysis? What approach do we take to evaluating options? How do we define and represent and communicate our requirements? How do we recommend? What's the relationship to recommending with solutions? And how do we record and communicate the analysis results? So these are things that you need to consider carefully when you are looking to build your framework. And we suggest that there's a process, discover it, design, think about the capability uplift. So once we've chosen the sets of tools and techniques, how do we make sure everyone in the business analysis community and the various stakeholders as well have the skills? How do we embed that? How do we learn? What is the organizational change management? And then coming back around. So this cycle of design, capability, uplift, embed, it's a learning cycle. It's a constant Kaizen process, getting better and getting better. It's not a one and done. So how do we continually make sure that our framework is fit for purpose, that it really meets the teams and the organization's need, that we can make sure that the flow of work, our value funnel, that we've got a clear understanding that everything we do fits in with the organization strategy, that we break that down into the portfolio. We have a set of outcomes. Maybe we're planning at quarterly, 1 to 3 months. How do we deliver on that? If we're using something like Scrum, the typically less than 2 weeks, and what do we do on the day-by-day basis, and understanding where things switch from theory to reality, what is the granularity, how big are those rocks, and making sure that the learning cycle is built into. So our business analysis framework is part of a bigger product delivery framework that organizations need to have. and ensuring that we are building the right thing is one of the most important parts of our role as business analysis professionals. And it's not about just having this list of 27 techniques that I can pull out. The Grady Booch quote, "A fool with a tool is still a fool." And if we go to chapter 9 of the Babok, it's really interesting. If we look at the skills that the world needs today, we look at things like the World Economic Forum list of professions and skill sets that are going to be valuable in the 2020s and 2030s. They map to the underlying competencies of business analysis: communication, ethics, personal accountability, analytical thinking, problem solving, leadership, facilitation, domain knowledge. You have to become competent in the domain that you're working in. And oh, by the way, there's a whole lot of tools and techniques that we can and should use. So it truly isn't about the mechanics of the tools. It's the thought, the thinking that goes into it, and those underlying competencies truly do set us up for success. Yeah. Some common flaws, some anti-patterns. Pick the latest trendy technique and try to make it fit. Some of us were around in the 1990s and early 2000s when everything had to be done in use cases. Today, we see the same mistake being made with everything must be done in user stories. No. What is the appropriate technique or tool for the context? There's the book by the authors of the Atlantic Systems Guild, Adrenaline Junkies to Template Zombies. 26, and they got one for every letter of the alphabet, 26 common mistakes that they have seen in professional analysis. Misunderstanding your stakeholders, missing key stakeholders, making assumptions, the misalignment between strategy and execution, so common. Not thinking about analysis as a key competency. It's, yeah, anyone can do that. And of course, the one size fits all thinking. And I love, again, the Jeff Patton quote. At the end of the day, your job isn't to get the requirements right. Your job is to change the world. That is what we as business analysis professionals do. We help change the world. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It's the people, it's the people, it's the people. It's all about the people. It's not about our tools and techniques. It's not about our practices. Our frameworks, our tools, they should support us in creating an environment where people thrive, where we change the world in a great way to the benefit of our stakeholders, our customers, our clients, and our organization. That's why having a business analysis framework is a useful step. But he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It's all about the people. And yeah, shameless plug, SoftEd certainly can help. We've done this. We've worked with many organizations. We can help. We've got a wide range of training courses. We can help you set up your practice. We can help you define your framework, but it's your framework. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is that. I see there's a question there from Ian.
That's right. Do you want me to read it out or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So with regards to the rock crushing diagram, maybe you want to go back to it, I don't know. But is there any advice you would give for teams that start out with what ends up being a too generalized design document and ends up with too much scope creep?
So if I'm...
That sounds like a catch-all document with everything and anything in it.
Yeah. So yeah, the advice I would give is make sure that the rocks that you're putting through the rock crusher are well-formed rocks. So in the rock crusher book, I'll test Toby now. What are the characteristics of a well-formed rock, Toby?
Oh, bloody hell. That's not fair. let me...
Okay.
I can't remember.
A well-formed rock has a test and a verifiable model. The verifiable model tells us how will we know this has been delivered, and the test proves whether or not it has been. So at one level, at a large rock that's maybe in the speculative time horizon, the model, the assertion that we're making, the hypothesis that we're working on is we're going to change the entry screen for this product. And here is a mock-up. The test is if we show this screen mock-up to a sample of 10 representative users, and 8 of them say that this will improve their use of the product, then we will continue down this path. That's the verifiable model. The test is show it to 10 people. If 8 of them or more say that, yes, this will improve their use of the product, then we will continue and we will work down. If 7 of them say it will help and 3 don't, we won't continue with that. We'll go back and we'll revisit the model. We'll change the mock-up. So that's at the sort of speculative forecasted level of granularity. Getting right down to a rock that is very, very, that's been crushed to a point where it's ready to go into the team. It could be a user story with a set of acceptance criteria. And the test, of course, is build the thing. So from the rock crusher model perspective, every one of these rocks needs to be well formed. It needs to have the verifiable model, and it needs to have a clearly defined test. The how will I know? And that prevents us getting the too generalized artifacts. So, I hope that was helpful.
Nice, Shane. I've got another little question here. What do you think about training all the staff in a small organization in some level of BA framework in order to get a start on better rocks?
James, thank you for a wonderful question. And of course, I'm going to show my bias. I work for an organization that delivers training. But yes, the more people understand the language, the more people understand what a good rock looks like, then the more value and the less confusion. So we come back to that communication and collaboration. Thank you.
Another one from Dan Lindsay, who has asked, how would you suggest a BA can be most effective in an environment where the strategy is ever-changing and only loosely linked to projects and initiatives? There's a disconnect.
Where there's a disconnect. Now, here I want to say, can we be courageous and say, don't ask the hard questions? So when a new piece of work or a new rock comes down the line to us, how will I know that this is going to solve the right problem? So coming back to that, the well-formed rock, the verifiable model, and the test. How will I know is your responsibility to ask as a business analyst. And it could be that actually, yes, this thing truly is valuable. It's worth doing. And I can see the how will I know. And yeah, maybe the organization strategy is not too clear, but the value that the organization and the clients will get from it is. On the other hand, when I ask that how will I know question, and I'm not getting the comfort that if we do this, it will make a difference in the world, it will help us to achieve the organization goals and outcomes, even though it might not totally align with strategy. Well, then I need to have the courage to say, but this is a bad idea. Some of the best business analysts I know are very, very good at helping the organization to recognize when they should not do things. 68% of the features in typical product are never used. New products in the marketplace, over 80% of them fail. Why? Because we're really efficiently solving the wrong problem. As the business analysis professional, I can prevent that. And that's my responsibility.
All right. Thank you, Shane. Hopefully that answers the question. There's one more here. How does a BA framework support the elevation of business analysis to our leadership? We have a challenge around leaders not seeing the importance of BA in strategy.
So this is where having a framework and showing how that framework links to strategy. So the strategy is here, and we've got a framework. We're going to be able to show, by using this framework, we will be able to show that every piece of work that we're doing aligns with the organization strategy and ensures that we are solving the right problem. So it elevates, it talks to the professionalism of the business analysis practice in the organization. It talks to that value of the work that we do as not just the order taker of requirements, not just the documenter, but the person, the group who is asking those hard questions and ensuring that what we build is the right what we build, what we need to build. So excellent. Yeah, having a framework, I truly believe, does elevate the practice.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Shane. I think we've reached our time limit, unfortunately. We could listen for a very long time. Brilliant presentation. We've covered a lot of ground, from what is a business analysis framework to where it might sort of fit within your context, and some techniques to use, and ultimately building your framework with some neat tips and tricks to observe. Thank you very much for all the Q&A, and all those who have sort of participated will get the webinar, the recording, and the slide deck. And feel free to contact us. And you've got lots of love there, and applause and hands and, you know, glitter and all that sort of thing. So well done, Shane. Excellent job. Thank you very much for all attending. And I believe that's a wrap, isn't it?
I think it is. Thank you very, very much, folks. That was fun.
Thanks all.